Good evening and welcome to Signs of Destiny 2004. I'm your host for this weekend, Dr. Chet Snow, and this evening, Saturday evening, it's my really great privilege to have as our keynote speaker Dr. Jose Arguelles, best known for his role in initiating the world-famous Harmonic Convergence Global Peace Meditation of August of 1987. He was also one of the organizers of the Concept of Earth Day, and is recognized as the father of the Whole Earth Festival, which is now in its 33rd year, being celebrated annually in Davis, California. Dr. Arguelles has a PhD in art history and aesthetics from the University of Chicago, and he is also an artist and has been an educator and an author of several books, and in his most recent work, of course, is Time and the Technosphere, and even more recently than that, he has written the preface to the book by Carl Johan Kaleman, which we have copies of in the bookstore. I think all the others have sold out, with the possible exception of The Surfers of the Zuvuya. And is that a novel, or is it sort of in between? It's a surfing book. All right. Well, in any case, Dr. Arguelles is going to tell us about the road to 2012 and the spiritual journey that encompasses as we move from an old time system which is out of sync with the galactic harmony into a new time system which will bring us back into resonance with that galactic system. So without further ado, Dr. Jose Arguelles.
Thank you, Chet, and good evening, everybody. That was a great warm-up with the Aztec dancers. I'd like to begin with the prayer to the seven directions. From the east, house of light, may wisdom dawn in us so we may see all things in clarity. From the north, house of night, may wisdom ripen in us, so we may know all from within. From the west, house of transformation, may wisdom be transformed into right action so we may do what must be done. From the south, house of the eternal sun, may right action reap the harvest, so we may enjoy the fruits of planetary being. from above, house of heaven, where star people and ancestors gather. May their blessings come to us now. From below, house of earth, may the heartbeat of her crystal core bless us with harmonies to end all war. From the center, galactic source, which is everywhere at once. May everything be known as the light of mutual love. Ayum hunabku, evam maya, emaho. Ayum hunabku, evam maya, emaho. Ayum hunabku, evam maya, emaho. That's the prayer to the 7 galactic directions, the usual directions we think of north, south, east, and west, and of course then above where the star people and the ancestors gather, where the star people and the ancestors gather. And from below, the house of earth, where the heartbeat of her crystal core blesses with harmony to end all war. The core of the earth is a crystal octahedron. That's what it is on the 3rd dimension. And the 4th dimension is the center of a living reality that is in contact with above, where the star people and the ancestors gather. Because intradimensionally, within the earth, we know there is another earth. This other earth knows us, though we know it not. This other earth within the earth we know is waiting to manifest. It is waiting to manifest dependent upon our ability to shed the skin that we no longer need. Signs of destiny, for sure. The phenomenon of the crop circles. As we know, they have been with us for a long time. But when they became a truly, quote-unquote, modern phenomenon was after 1987. The harmonic convergence was a signal coordinated between the center of the earth, the crystal earth, the intradimensional living core, the living reality within the earth, the other earth that knows us though we know it not. The harmonic convergence was a signal coordinated between that crystal earth, those of us on the surface who had at least some inkling that we might be more than just third-dimensional entities taking care of the machine, and coordination with the star people and the ancestors, the star people above, the extraterrestrials, the extra higher dimensionals. Because obviously, we who form a little cellular mass on the surface of this earth, human molecules tending the machine, obviously our knowledge is highly limited when we consider the multiple dimensions, when we consider the entirety of the universe. It's estimated that there are more than 100 billion galaxies, and each galaxy has billions of stars. 100 billion galaxies at least, and each one with billions of stars. They're not all just gas and inert matter floating in infinite space. And that's only a sliver, a slice of the multidimensional reality. We're coordinating and being coordinated by a plan that goes from the core of the earth, the other earth that knows us, though we know it not. Those of us on the surface who have some dim memory that we are repeating a show that has happened before, not only on this planet, but on other planets and on other worlds. Not only that, but that we are repeating the same disaster, the same catastrophe. And it's always to this point, will the critical mass arise in time to remember what is actually going on? And this is coordinated from the center of the living earth, those of us on the surface of the earth, and the star people in the higher dimensions whose superior telepathic, biopsychic, magnetic technologies every so often penetrate our little thick bubble of belief system to give a signal. Some of the signals we find in this coordination, we call them crop circles. And they've been appearing, as I said, profusely since 1987. What happened in 1987, as I said, was a coordinated signal. About a half a year before the harmonic convergence, almost precisely a half a year, was the sighting of the first supernova in over 400 years. Supernova is referred to as 1987A. I refer to it as the Quetzalcoatl supernova because it was a signal of the prophecy of the 13 heavens and the 9 hells, which was being completed on August 16th in 1987. This 1987A Quetzalcoatl supernova is quite a phenomenon. It had one peak, it burst in 1987. 10 years later, in 1997, it had another spectacular burst in which it sent out 3 different rings traveling at a very fast rate in space. And in 2007, in the middle of the summer, there will be one final burst of this Quetzalcoatl 1987A supernova. That was the signal. A supernova not only sends out radiation, cosmic radiation, it sends out cosmic information. It was the signal, the very, very precisely timed signal of the countdown to 2012. The 1987 harmonic convergence was a function, you might say, of the 1987A supernova. We think that we're down here and that we're doing things. We're not doing things. We're being done. We're being done through. Some of us are just pure robots who are completely enslaved to the belief system of the machine. We have created in the last, particularly the last 50 years or so, a self-sustaining entity, which is a total technological machine entity called the technosphere, which is a total artificial entity, and the human beings fundamentally are the symbiotic parasite of this particular entity, the technosphere. Because of the complete acceptance and needing to fulfill the demands of the technosphere, we limit our spiritual, mental development. As long as we limit our spiritual, mental development by allowing ourselves to be controlled by the technosphere, all the different forms of the machine technology, the reliance on nuclear technology, the reliance on the technologies that create more waste that can be eliminated and that use up more resources faster than they can be replaced, then we are operating in a field of planetary death wish, that we're going in that direction. This is not the first time it has happened. It happened on Mars. It happened on Maldek, the asteroid belt. The myths of Atlantis all come always to the same point, taking a wrong turn in a technological system that ends up robbing the spirit of its direction and replacing the possibility of mental, spiritual development, expansion into cosmic conscious, of replacing that with a complete reliance on electronic media, machine technology, mental manipulation. So we're down to the wire now. 2004 to 2012 means that we have 8 years down to the wire. What does the 2012 mean? But that's when the time's up light goes on and the curtain goes down and we have to show what we got to show. And what we're supposed to show is how spiritually unified were we able to get when we had this 26,000-year gambit as a evolutionary cycle called Homo sapiens. How far did we get? The real goal was to see if we could become spiritually unified and unify the planet spiritually so we could go advance to the next stage of consciousness development. All of this has been part of a large surveillance program. As I said, the harmonic convergence and what we call prophecy, the prophecy of 2012, is a large interdimensional coordination program. The technosphere that we're operating within is operating in an artificial timing frequency which has accelerated and accelerated and accelerated. So we're down to the atomic clock and with nanoseconds, and we have nanotechnology to accompany that. And we have rapidly expanding biotechnologies as well, the manipulation of the DNA code, the whole thing, which is all completely a wrong direction and a function of an accelerating timing frequency that is plunging us directly into hell. That's the actual script that is playing out at just the pure surface. If you look at the Gaudiya backdrop, here's the globe, here's the earth, that's the surface of the earth. On the surface of the earth, you see the cloud patterns, and you see the oceans, and you see the weather patterns. And then in there, you see this cancerous entity, which is devouring the biosphere, heating up the earth, destroying the ozone layer, messing with the electromagnetic fields, messing with the DNA code of life, causing species extinction, polluting the oceans, destroying the plankton. That's the surface. And if you just go within that belief system, well, say, this is a hopeless deal. And yet, all of this has been previsioned, this has been prescripted. We're sleepwalkers who are repeating a program that we find blowing in the red dust of Mars around the face of Cydonia and the pyramids of Cydonia. We find it in the fragments of the asteroid belt. It's interesting the names that we give these fragments of the asteroid belt. You know, the largest fragment in the asteroid belt was discovered in 1804 because a certain astronomer named Franz Bode knew according to Platonic and Kepler's theory, that between Mars and Jupiter there should be a planet. And sure enough, beginning actually in 1801, they began to had a big astronomers convention and train their telescopes up, and sure enough, within a short matter of time, they discovered a huge belt between precisely where a planet should have been, between Mars and Jupiter, the asteroid belt. People, the astronomers, hardly ever talk about this having been the possibility of this having been a planet. That's a taboo thought in the collective unconscious. We don't want to go there. Just like people don't like to go to the fact that Mars once sustained water, oceans, and that the red dust is oxidized metal, and that's actually a face on Mars. The largest fragment in the asteroid belt is named Quetzalcoatl. Some of the more recently discovered smaller fragments have the names John, Paul, Ringo, and George. That's because that's actually, we all heard about the lost chord. Maldek is the lost chord. It's the haunted fifth. See, it's the fifth orbit out. Everyone was looking for that lost chord and the lost melody. Everyone's been haunted by that. All of that is sustained in that belt, that asteroid belt, the lost planet. That was the original Eden. It says in the Quran that when Adam committed the sin of disobeying the Creator, that he was sent down. He said he was sent to earth, and earth was going to be his home, but just for a while, because it's just a testing place here. We all have come from someplace else. Most of us have completely forgotten that. We're all transmigratory, interdimensional, interplanetary travelers. Our DNA has been passing through a lot of different realms for a very long time. All the programming and the conditioning of the third dimensional surface civilization is to continuously reduce the capacity of consciousness to now basically to the care of the machine and to the increase of what's called money. This is what's happening on the surface of this little planet, which we call Earth. Velatropa 24.3 from the Arcturus star system point of view. But what's also happening here, which is what this conference is all about, Signs of Destiny, is that someone's trying to tell us something. That's what all these signs are. Someone's trying to tell us something. Someone's sending us signals. Where are these signals coming from? Why did they begin to increase so rapidly after 1987? Because supernova A gave the signal of an expansion of the possibility of our consciousness expanding in dimensions beyond the ones that we are limiting ourselves to, which is the third dimension, the material physical plane. That we're intended to bust out of this and to go into a higher mental spiritual course of evolution where we have to shed our present technological skin. Nuclear technology is not the only technology. Electronic technology as we know it is not the only technology. We live in a universe of different force fields. We live in a universe that also includes biopsychic or telepathic force fields, and we live in a universe that also includes magnetic force fields. And these technologies of the telepathic, the biopsychic, magnetic force fields, we haven't really explored. And it's these technologies that are responsible for the phenomenon of the crop circles being projected very, very precisely by extra or intradimensional entities who are part of a large program to help us wake up and realize that we should really forget everything we know, because it really isn't doing us any good. That we really should forget even who we think we are. That's not helping us at all either. We maybe should take all of our business cards and put them in a big bonfire. Say, goodbye, ego. That's not helping. We need to get a clear mind. I said yesterday in the Institute that I realized I had to stop being a human because I needed to see clearly, and humans can't see clearly. Humans can't see clearly because they have too many conditionings, they have too many biases, they're encrusted with all sorts of conditioned beliefs, most of it unconscious and unexamined. Everybody should go on a 3-month Vipassana meditation retreat and then start all over. See what you know about your mind. Unless we know our mind, we don't really know what we know. So we're on this spiritual journey. The meaning of 2012 is that this is the big signal. We can make it heaven on earth if we want. But if we want heaven on earth, we really have to exert a tremendous amount. Everybody who's in spiritual traditions knows that this is all a journey, that we travel, that this journey, that we are moving in stages from one stage to the next. We know that individually, that we proceed from one stage of consciousness to another stage of consciousness, to another stage of consciousness. We know that we have this portal at one end called birth, and we have a portal at the other end called death, and that we have to somehow or other account for what happens to us between these two portals, and we have to get ready for this portal called death. In fact, we actually have to be ready for it all the time because none of us really knows when we're going to go. None of us really knows that. And right now, we really have to be thinking that way because this whole entire apparatus, the civilization that has been building up like this for over 5,000 years, since the 13 Baktun count of the Maya began in 3113 BC, that all this is now going down the tubes very fast. So there's nothing really that we should be trying to hold on to of this particular civilization, of this particular way of life. We actually should be preparing for the spirit journey. We actually should be beginning the spirit journey right now. That it is all a spirit journey anyway. We've got these bodies that were lent to our soul as kind of like testing vehicles. But it's the soul that's traveling. The body doesn't need to go anywhere. Like I said, the earth is going the Earth travels 1,600,000 miles in its orbit every day. In 28 days, it goes 45 million miles. In 365 days, it travels 585 million miles. In 1 hour, it travels 66,000 miles. In 1 minute, it's going 1,111 miles a minute. 19 miles a second. Woo, we just went another 19 miles, another 19 miles. So why do we need to go anywhere? I saw Eric Clapton just got busted for driving 134 miles an hour in France. Well, he should figure it out. If you add that, he still isn't going to be able to beat the Earth's rate of speed. So we're already going so fast, and we're building a civilization that's artificially moving at such a fast rate of speed, it really doesn't know where it's going or why, because the faster it moves, the more limiting the consciousness becomes. There was actually more expanded consciousness 100 years ago than there is today, despite all the ayahuasca and LSD in the world. So we're at a spot here where it's really important. I mean, there's there's a few people here compared to how many people there are on the planet, the number of us in this room is really limited. Yeah, we've all come together here. We all came here because we all actually really want to know something. We all want to know, what is the meaning? What's the meaning of the crop circles? Why are they happening? What's the meaning of 2012? It's really close. Are we supposed to know something more? Is there something we need to do that we can prepare? How do we do this? Those of us who are here just reflecting on the matters that we're reflecting on represent probably a pretty elite minority. They don't think about these things at the editorial offices of USA Today or at CNN. But we're thinking about them. So there must be that we're all here because we have some inkling that maybe it's true that we're being moved on a divine interdimensional shuttle called the divine plan, close to this omega point called 2012, but it's a spiritual journey. And we might as well begin to understand right now that this is a spiritual journey. We have to get spiritual. To get spiritual, to get really spiritual, if you go back and read the lives of the great saints, of the mystics, you go back and everybody loves Jalaluddin Rumi. I bet you he never believed he'd be the most popular poet in the New Age back in Persia in the 13th century. If you read his life, if you know his life story, he had a lot of heartache, and he was a desperate seeker. You take his contemporary, another guy, Ibn al-Arabi, another Sufi, who traveled from Spain to Persia, Iran, Mecca, and then finally was able to come to a place where he said, my heart is a temple, for gazelles it's a pasture, for the worshippers of the Kaaba, it's the Kaaba, for idol worshippers it's a temple full of idols. I follow the religion of love, so whatever you want, I will become that. Water takes the color of the receptacle it's in. However we believe in God, that is our God. We all have some inkling of a supreme creator, and whatever we believe it is, that's exactly what it is for us. And if we know that everybody has a slightly different coloration, as it were, but we all have the same, we're all called to the same memory, we're all called back to the same source. That's what 2012 is the call from the source to remember our universal oneness, to recall that we have all been here before, that we have been traveling on many worlds, that we're interplanetary, interdimensional travelers. We don't want this place to blow up. What are we going to do? So if we don't want this place to blow up and we know it's a spiritual journey, we have to understand, there must be something spiritual, some type of spiritual knowledge, maybe even a spiritual technology, if you want to call it that we can participate in, that will help us resolve the situation on this planet. We know that beginning with the harmonic convergence, we were setting up a field. We called for people to go to sacred sites, Lake Baikal, Ayers Rock, Stonehenge, Teotihuacan, Machu Picchu, Mount Shasta, Mount Fuji. Many different places. We said, go to those sacred sites and let's all be there at sunrise. So if you looked at sunrise on the planet on August 16th and you had astral goggles on, then you could see astral waves of unified intention rising at each of those points, creating a moving wave around the planet, a ripple that created a unified field of biopsychic intention interacting ever so faintly with the Earth's electromagnetic field to create a little ripple, a little dent, a little marker. And everyone said, yeah, I remember what I was doing that day. Or, hey, my life changed after that. So that was just the start. But there's a couple of things there that showed us that we were actually all responding to the signal from the center of the Earth, the interdimensional core. It's an octahedral core in the center of the Earth. They say it's an iron crystal. It was actually discovered by seismologists just before the harmonic convergence in 1986. Elongated at both ends at the poles. Streams of cosmic radiation enter the poles, go into the center of the Earth, and at the center of the Earth it's like what you might call an interdimensional plasmic photon cauldron that's tended to by interdimensional entities. And from there, signals are sent to the surface of the Earth, sometimes magnetic light ships will come up and take a look. Places like Mount Shasta, other spots, and then descend. And this is in communication with the star people, the guardians, the planetary hierarchy. I wouldn't be here with this message if I wasn't supported by all the invisible beings of the planetary hierarchy, and if I wasn't in resonance with the interdimensional entities of the center of the Earth, and if I hadn't been prepared by prophecies left by the Maya that were also all connected to this grand plan called 2012. So what we see there is, yes, we can get together. People like are still doing this, Jimmy Twyman, God bless him. it still has this idea. We were with Jimmy in Baghdad last March. Presented the 2012 prophecy at the National Theater in Baghdad. It was really a very amazing event because a lot of the sheikhs were there and Sufi singers and so on. And the sheikhs, it was very touching because the sheikhs had never heard about the Mayas. They never heard about the 2012 prophecy, and they were just truly curious. And it was very, very sad and tragic because I knew I probably wouldn't get back there, and I didn't know how we would communicate in the future. We had to leave that seed, but they heard it. We know that the unified intention of critical groups of humans in specific places, sacred sites as they're called, because there the potency of what we might call the geomagnetic and the biopsychic fields is much more dense. Places like Teotihuacan or Palenque or Stonehenge or Machu Picchu. And so there's a greater potential of ripening that density of geomagnetic and biopsychic energy so that it can interact with the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth is a living entity. We think that just the life is on the surface. The Earth couldn't support the superficial life, the surface life, if the Earth itself weren't a living, evolving entity. Its core is the inner Earth. We know that around the octahedral core, there's a tympanum, as it's called, which is the inner Earth. And we know that this inner Earth, this tympanum, from seismological readings, has mountains and valleys and all of that. There's a whole other world in there. That this is the actual core of the living Earth. And then it has its surface life, which is the evolving surface membrane. Vladimir Vernadsky, the Russian scientist who did the most research on defining the whole of the life of the surface of the Earth, which is called the biosphere. The biosphere is the sum of all of life on Earth, which Vernadsky says the sum of all of life on Earth is one. That the biosphere, he said, is that region on Earth for the transformation of cosmic energy. In other words, like that's what the surface life is supposed to be, transforming cosmic energy. The trees, are doing that all the time. The plant life is doing that all the time, creating the carbon dioxide cycles, photosynthesizing. That's cosmic transformation. What are they photo? They're taking solar radiation and making it green, creating a whole cycles for us to breathe and live. So the surface life is for the transformation of cosmic energy. The core life is the core life of the Earth, the intradimensional life of the Earth, the intelligence of the Earth. And then above, in the electromagnetic field, is where the electromagnetic field consists, the lowest level of it is the ionosphere, which actually is what we call the meteorological control, electronic control system. That's what the HAARP, the High Altitude Atmospheric Research Program, that's what it messes with. It's being developed as a weapon, a warfare weapon, to send different frequency using Tesla type of technology, extra low frequency waves, that can be directed to any point of the ionosphere. For instance, you see how much information now, how much news is being drummed up right now. Iran isn't really keeping its promise to not create atomic warfare. So, see all these news stories now. So the HAARP can go over Iran and shift weather patterns, create droughts, send windstorms, knock out the whole system. That HAARP will be up and running completely by 2006. They've already been conducting experiments. There were a lot of hurricanes this last year, and the first hurricane in Brazil. And as interesting, there's been drought in Cuba. So that's the ionosphere. And then above the ionosphere, there's the electromagnetic field itself, which is between two radiation belts called the Van Allen radiation belts, which were discovered in 1953, the same year that the DNA was discovered. And 1 year after the tomb of the greatest of the Mayan prophets, Pakal Votan, his tomb was opened in 1952, and in the next year came these discoveries. When his tomb was opened in 1952, the Marxist archaeologist who dug for 3 years to get to his tomb, he finally opened that big stone door on June 15th, 1952, and he said when he opened that door, he said he could feel the thoughts, the last thoughts of the people who were in here escaping out that door. DNA and the magnetic fields were discovered the next year. That's a synchronistic discovery because the DNA and the electromagnetic fields operate in tandem. And within the two fields, the lower belt is 2,000 miles up, and the upper belt is 11,000 miles up. The one belt traps solar radiation, the other cosmic radiation, and then they come in at the poles like this. At the North Pole, they come in like this, and at the South Pole, they come in like this. And then the radiation goes into the poles. So when there's excess, they create what's called the aurora borealis and the aurora australis. But then the excess energy then goes through the axis of the Earth into the interdimensional core, where it spices up and creates this cauldron of plasmic cosmic energy within the core. So the noosphere, the Earth's mental sheath, is located, its operating mechanism is located between the two electromagnetic fields. The noosphere is a word that was coined again by Vernadsky, the researcher of the biosphere, and by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and a little-known French philosopher named Jules Leroy in 1926 in Paris. It was coined jointly by these three people. And they coined it because they knew Teilhard de Chardin was a paleontologist, and Vernadsky was a geochemist. But they both had come to the conclusion that the Earth, the surface of the Earth is a living unity, and it's an evolving unity, and that it is evolving beyond its material function into a higher mental consciousness function, and they were looking for a word for this next stage of its evolution, and they coined the word noosphere. The noosphere means the mental sheath, the Earth's mental sheath, the thinking layer of the earth. And we think our thoughts, but all we are is like tuning forks, and the thoughts are actually being resonated to us from the noosphere. That we notice that through the different stages of history, that even in different parts of the world that people have never met or known each other, yet they develop similar symbols at similar times, similar kinds of technologies, bronze technology developed in Africa and China and Greece. Different times, but they all follow the same pattern. That's because it's all those different cultural levels, cultural horizons, systems of thought are all being coordinated by the collective unconscious in the noosphere. Okay? So moving from the noosphere as the collective unconscious to the noosphere as the collective conscious. And Vernadsky and Teilhard de Chardin both said the noosphere is imminent. In 1941, Vernadsky was writing about the noosphere, and he was saying, the advent of the noosphere is something every statesman in the world should be aware of. He said, the noosphere is a function of what he referred to as biogeochemical combustion. That is to say, the rapid industrialization and burning up through fossil fuels and creating of the greenhouse gases, which is creating a fever in the biosphere. And this fever in the biosphere, biogeochemical combustion, is what will precipitate a qualitative change in the very nature of life itself. And this qualitative change is referred to as the noosphere, that we're going to be snapped into higher consciousness. Vernadsky said once we snap into the higher consciousness, that we'll enter a whole new geological era, which he referred to as the psychozoic era, the spiritualization of life. There's a Marxist scientist. At the same time, Teilhard de Chardin, Jesuit Catholic, biologist and paleontologist in the south of France, developing very similar thought. He said that we have to think in terms of the universe as there being planets with noosphere and planets without noosphere. Our planet is a planet with noosphere. The noosphere is something that's evolved into when the leading dynamic organism becomes planetary in nature, develops some type of global technology that unifies it, and that global technology that unifies it then is preparatory to its taking the humanity to a point of consciousness, spiritual consciousness unification, which he referred to as the omega point. And at the omega point, it's like the Christing of consciousness occurs, and we enter into the noosphere. The omega point is 2012. We are very close. We are all living in the cauldron of biogeochemical combustion. The burning of the resources, the destruction of the ozone layer, the destruction of the rainforest, the release of radioactivity, the continuing release of greenhouse gases, the emissions, all of that is the fever of the biosphere as it is ready to precipitate its next condition, its release from the enslavement to third-dimensional materialist technology and belief system into a state of spiritual advance. It's not just we who are evolving, but we are evolving life and the planet along with us. Sri Aurobindo, though he didn't speak of the noosphere spoke of the descent of the supramental, meaning that which is beyond mind. Sri Aurobindo said, what we call mind and consciousness is just a function of our ignorance. That there is something beyond mind, beyond what we conceive of as mind, the supramental, where our consciousness is released into absolute galactic cosmic consciousness, what R.M. Buck wrote about in his Cosmic Consciousness. That we are to be released into this. Interestingly, in the same year that Vernadsky and Desjardins coined the phrase the noosphere in 1926, in that same year on November 24th, 1926, Sri Aurobindo experienced what he called to as the descent of the supramental. The supramental, he said for the first time in the earth plane that the supramental had descended into the plane of human consciousness, and that this was a sign of the acceleration of the spiritual mental evolutionary process. These are all fundamental signs that we are now very close to that point where the evolutionary trip switch is about to be flipped. But the point of the advent of the noosphere, the point of the fulfillment of the prophecy of 2012 is that we have to do something. It's not just a matter of passively waiting for it to occur. We have to take spiritual action, mental action ourselves. We have to read the signs and know that there is something we must do. As I said, one thing we must do is realize that we are operating in an error in time and return to living in harmony with the universal cycles of nature. And the simple instrument to do that is with the 13-moon, 28-day calendar, which is based on universal harmonic cycles. That's the first step to returning to living in the natural cycles. This is being a cry that's being taken up, as I mentioned in the Institute yesterday. People in more than 90 countries now are taking this up and following that. And because when you do that, then you're making a change in your mental frequency. And that's the key. We have to begin to change our mental frequency. We're falling into the trap of the destruction of the previous world systems, where we subordinate the development of our consciousness to technological progress. And that's a mistake that's been made in all the previous Atlantises and the previous world systems. We have to begin to get out of that. You have to change your mental frequency. And the whole scene is dominated by an accelerating mental frequency based on an error in time. So you have to correct that first and get in tune with the natural cycles. The 13-moon, 28-day is a universal cosmic cycle. The second is to understand that it is in our power through our intention to actually affect the Earth's electromagnetic field. The noosphere, as a governing mechanism of the thinking layer of the planet that governs the thought waves of the different advancing stages of life on Earth, that this noosphere is located between the two radiation belts. So that we're already actually in our thinking operating with electromagnetic signals that are interfacing with the electromagnetic field. The point is to make it intentional and conscious and collective. The noosphere, if you have to stop and think, if there's cosmic consciousness and we're operating as one planetary mind, who's going to keep a secret? If you're operating with universal telepathy, you got nothing to hide. That's a very big shift in our consciousness. Right now we live in atomized, individualized, egotistical consciousness where you can say one thing and do another. You can act one way outside and another way inside. And we can't get away with that anymore. All of us who think we're enlightened or advanced or new age or spiritual, we have to have the same face inside and the same face outside. We have to have the same face when we wake up in the morning as we go to bed at night. In the ancient Maya, they described the person of wisdom as the one who's acquired a true face. Because a true face is one that's true all the time. It's not different for different people, but it's true all the time. You have to work at that. To really do this thing skillfully, yeah, we each have to clean up our own house. We have to go inside, and we all really know. We just have to slow our minds down a little. We all need mind training. Slow our minds down a little, recognize what is our ego and what is our true self. The only thing that's going to get you through is your true self. You've got to learn how to recognize what that is. And once you recognize what that is, then you can know that you can recognize that all the time and in any situation. And that's the fundamental root or the basis of it. And your true self, what you see in there, what is that true self? That true self is God being happy that you recognized Him. That's what your true self is. Because God's evolving with us. The Supreme Creator, whatever you want to call that. So God, to getting divine consciousness. Becoming the Godhead. That's all real. That's all true. That's all. If one person can do it, why can't another person do it? Why people perhaps, maybe Ramakrishna was a forerunner, but why can't we be like Ramakrishna? There's many, many different examples, and they all exist to show us any one of us can do it. Milarepa was the greatest Tibetan yogi, and he practiced black magic and killed lots of people. But he still made it through. Even Moses killed someone when he was a teenager. Everyone's got something to. But the only reason we have stuff like that is so we have something to quote unquote overcome, and beneath that see, oh, that's our true self in there. So that's the essence really of the spiritual journey that individually we have to make. So we understand that we can get to this place of, because we need to have a clear mind. If we're going to be able to affect a change that is a utilization of what we might call a psycho-spiritual technology, we have to be really clear and free of our ego. If we're going to work in a group together to create some kind of change, if we're going to coordinate ourselves around the planet to create a group telepathic field, because that's what we try to do with these prayers, with the global prayers, with the global meditations. We're trying to create a planetary telepathic field. These are all kind of proto-noospheric exercises. But we need to create something that will be the equivalent and even greater than the atomic bomb, but of a positive psycho-mental spiritual nature. We need to create that. That's the only way that we will end the war on terror. The war on terror really began on August 6th, 1945. Because those states that now hold the bomb, those are the states that are the terrorist states, because those are the weapons of terror. And they don't want of course they don't want anyone else to have those weapons. Of course no one wants anyone else to have them, but they don't want anyone else to have them, but they won't dismantle their own. That's the terrorism. And the only way that we're going to end that is by an act of a psycho-mental, spiritual, technological act that is so stunning and so obviously demonstrable that it will blow everybody's mind forever. People will say, I don't think I want my gun anymore. That's too far out. We can really do that? That's what we have to do. Those of us who think we're in the enlightened minority, who are going ahead, we have to really be able to spiritually unify. We have to really be able to coordinate ourselves telepathically all over the planet. And we really have to have some type of goal that says we can do something that's the equivalent of the spiritual atomic bomb. But something that is every bit as positive in its effects and long-lasting as the atomic bomb has. The atomic bomb changed the geology and the psychology of the earth forever. So to change that, you need something even greater. But it has to be positive, because if it was greater, more negative, that would be the end. So we need something even greater than that, that's positive. Everybody did everybody get one of these? If you didn't get one, we got more of these. Okay. Okay. What we're seeing here is a visualization of something that we refer to as the circumpolar rainbow bridge. Circumpolar rainbow bridge, meaning it goes around the poles of the earth. See that? Everyone's got one of these you can see. You can see the earth there. And then the rainbows follow the form of the electromagnetic radiation belts. So I said the radiation belts create a kind of donut shape around the Earth. And within those radiation belts is what's referred to as the noospheric thinking regulator, which is called the psi bank, PSI. Psi bank, that's detailed in my book, Earth Ascending. And it's the psi bank that regulates all the different thinking layers that exist. So what you're seeing here then, the rainbow then, that you see, the double rainbow, it's the rainbow bridge circumpolar, that follows the form of the radiation belts. In other words, where the violet is on the inside, that would be toward the lower radiation belt, right, where the heavier protons are, and then on the red end up here, that's the outer radiation belt where the lighter electrons are. Okay? And then those belts go in and the rainbow then would be like the field, the noospheric field between the two radiation belts. Okay. So we know that when there's an excess, and we know also that, for instance, that since the supernova 1987A, that supercharged our local star, the sun, so that since that time, especially beginning in 1989, when the sun began a 23-year cycle from 1980, this 23-year sunspot cycle. The sunspot cycle goes in two halves, about 11 and a half years each, where the pulsations, the sunspots pulse from 30 degrees north and south in an 11 and a half year cycle, and they pulse until they get to the center, the equator, and then that's when they reach a maximum intensity, and then they switch polarity, and then the pulsation begins again, only if the upper sunspot was positive and the lower negative, in the second 11 and a half year cycle, the upper one's negative and the lower one's positive. They pulse again toward the center, they reach the equator, and they hit a max. And that's when the solar flares increase. Well, we know the solar flares and the sunspot cycles were as intense as in this last 23-year cycle as they have ever been. Now, it's interesting, the 23-year cycle began in 1989. Its first 11 and a half years peaked toward the end of 2000, early 2001, and then the whole 23-year cycle peaks in 2012. We know that the first half of the cycle we saw phenomena that we hadn't seen before, including an increase of plasma, that's ionized electrons, in the atmosphere, which create many different spectacular rainbow effects in the clouds and in the atmosphere. A lot of you have seen these. Sometimes people call them sundogs. And it's a great increase of these, particularly in 1999, 2000, and 2001. We'll see a huge increase of these in 2011 and 2012. In 1999, I worked with a group of people in Picarquín in Chile for 7 weeks. We had about 144 people down there, and we were all following the new time and worked in groups according to the harmonics of the new time. And we worked on an experiment, and that our experiment was to see if the different groups could coordinate and on certain days see if they could create rainbow effects in the sky. When we did the final experiment on this towards the end of the 7 weeks, we had really spectacular effects. The skies were just filled with rainbows. And we're operating with this, with the theory that the sky is particularly charged with plasmas, and our notion was that if we can create that, just like the medicine man who creates rain, our brain waves are electromagnetic, we can affect the electromagnetic field, that then we can create an effect where we can, as it were, telepathically stretch the aurora borealis and the aurora australis to connect at the equator and create a rainbow bridge that goes from pole to pole on both sides. In 2000, just before the data time on July 25th, a crop circle appeared, which basically was the image of the Earth's electromagnetic field with the Earth in it. And it was exactly the theory that we were working on, and we felt that we received a very strong signal that when we get to 2012, we can maximize this and create this effect, the circumpolar rainbow bridge around the Earth. There are many prophecies about the rainbow bridge. In the Norse prophecies of Odin, you have the Bifrost Bridge, which is often depicted as a rainbow bridge. Many Native American traditions speak in the prophecies of the rainbow bridge. When the rainbow bridge appears, that the star people and the ancestors will be able to come across on that. So we've been working with many groups around the world on this visualization. And I want everybody to have this. And what you do is you just what you see is at the center of it, you see that's the octahedral core, very stylized, but that's the octahedral core. You can see yellow and blue on the bottom and red and white on the top. You can see that's an octahedron. And then you'll see down the center there's a positive and negative coil, like a DNA coil. That's like the prana that goes through the center of the Earth, just like the prana that goes through our body. Okay, goes in a double helix coil like that. Okay, you can see that. So that goes from the North Pole to the South Pole and the South Pole to the North. Okay, so the positive, negative charge goes through the center of the Earth, goes through that octahedron, and then you see these structures. There's a red 7-pointed structure above, a blue one below on the polar axis. These are called time atoms. Visualize the red time atom spinning in a clockwise direction, and the blue time atom spinning in a counterclockwise direction. That neutralizes and stabilizes the polar axis. Then on that's the pole. Those are the polar time atoms. Then on either side there's a white and a yellow. Those those time atoms govern the gravitational plane, and they move around. You can imagine them like paddle wheelers going around in the gravitational plane, stabilizing the gravitational plane of the Earth. By mentally projecting this, and those four, you'll notice that each of them are made of 7 points. 7 times 4 is 28. That's the same number as the 28-day cycle. So when you visualize that, you're actually visualizing the stabilization of the Earth so that we don't veer off course, so that the extra low frequency experiments that are being done by the HAARP and so on, that they don't destabilize the Earth, that this is done to stabilize the Earth. Then at the center of that, then the plasmic energy streams in at both poles, but it also streams out again. So what we visualize is, and then you see the core is blown up, and you see the Earth around that. That core is right in the center of the Earth. You can visualize this actually in your heart. You can visualize the Earth in your heart, visualize the octahedral core in the center of the Earth, visualize those time atoms moving in the manner I told you, and that then then telepathically you are directing the plasmic energy to come out of both poles and to come into a stream that creates a rainbow bridge around the earth. And when you imagine that rainbow bridge remains stationary. You can imagine that one side is always pointing toward the sun, and the other side is always pointing exactly away from the sun to what we might call midnight. Then the earth is always revolving within that. To take a while to think about that and visualize what that actually would look like, how that would affect our whole, what we might call the whole psychoatmospheric field of the earth. As I said, we've been working on this experiment since 1990, in the late 1990s. We found out that we actually can create the rainbow effects, and now we're building up and saying what we want to do is create batteries, biopsychic electromagnetic batteries of human beings at sacred sites around the planet practicing this visualization. We have a maximum point of practicing this every July 25th, which is called the Day Out of Time. So, like for instance, this next coming July 25th, Day Out of Time, 2005, there will be lots of people around the world who are already doing this. You can join them in this common visualization. As we approach 2012, then we'll be getting to the point where we're going to be building up the telepathic field that is able to become so unified and so focused and become so clear in its mind, so free of ego and so spiritualized that it can focus this. Just like we saw these dancers putting their feet in the fire and getting the fire. People have done those fire walks. We can do anything. With God, all things are possible. No one thought the atomic bomb was possible, and it happened. This is the same. This is possible. This is the possible vision that in 2012 we are able to spring the circumpolar rainbow bridge, because we have been practicing and developing increasingly large groups of human beings who are willing to be telepathic, biopsychic, electromagnetic batteries in unison with each other around the earth, projecting the same vision and the same image and holding that. This is an example and synchronized in time, because that's the whole point. Time is the factor of universal synchronization. We synchronize ourselves in time with a common purpose. We can create an effect that will be universal, that will be irreversible, and that will be greater than the atomic bomb. This circumpolar rainbow bridge will be permanent. It will hook up the auroras from both poles and hold them there. It will be the actual manifestation and the advent of the noosphere. It will be the passage through Teilhard de Chardin's omega point. It will be the advent of the psychozoic era, the spiritualization of life on earth. And it will prove that human beings together could do something positively greater than they were ever able to do negatively. This is a positive visualization. A rainbow around the earth is a totally healing image. This is the healing of the earth, the healing of our hearts, the healing of our lives, and instant evolution. Because we are at that stage. We've run out of the options of material technological progress, and we have to start looking at the options of spiritual mental progress. How do we begin to affect that? How can we do that? So I wanted everybody here to have that. You can go visualize that. You can go think about it. You can get more information on this on our website, www.lawoftime.org. And like I said, you can practice this visualization anytime. It doesn't hurt you when you see it in yourself, with the earth in the center, and with the core, the time atoms, the earth, and then the rainbow coming out. You can visualize that rainbow coming up and encompassing your aura, so you have a rainbow aura. Everybody would like to have a rainbow aura. Yeah. We are the rainbow people, the real rainbow nation. And if you go read the book of Genesis, chapter 9, verses 12 to 17, it says, Noah came out of the ark and he saw a rainbow. And God says, this rainbow is my covenant with the earth, that I will not let the earth be destroyed by a flood again. And when you see this rainbow coming out from behind the clouds, you know that's my covenant with the earth. So when we create the rainbow bridge, we are with God fulfilling our covenant with the earth to heal the earth, to make our earth an attraction to other galactic visitors. Wow, did you see what they did, man? A rainbow ring around the earth. Let's go there. It's safe once again. We want this place to be safe once again. 2012. It's stamped in everybody's heart. And we need a positive vision. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this conference, that there's many things to think about. This is a spiritual journey, truly spiritual journey. Let's start the spirit journey right now. Everyone can make a list of things they don't need. And start with that. Because the less things you need on the material plane, the more time you got for your spirit. Let's take more time for our spirit. Let's cultivate our mind, cultivate our spirit. We're evolving and we need to learn more. We can't be satisfied with anything. Like I said, we should really forget everything we know, including our names. And start like babes. And be ready to enter the kingdom of heaven on earth. Because we know, like what Jesus said, only if you become as a child again will you get in. Children can dream things like this. We are the children of the rainbow. We are the children of the earth. Let's unify. Let's be at peace. Let's be one in spirit. Let's remember the Creator. Let's not forget who we really are. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Chet and Callista, and I know there were two other people, I don't remember their names, helping you administer this. I don't come out and do public speaking hardly at all. And as I said, I've been on retreat, and I hope to continue to be in retreat for the next year and a half. But there was something about Chet's invitation. I never met him before. I had heard about his book, about the mass hallucinations. But something about Chet's invitation and his manner in presenting this opportunity, I felt it was important to come here. I'm divinely guided, we all are. And I hope that we all feel a divine spark from this, just as I felt a divine spark from Chet in his invitation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, sir. Well, thank you for that inspiring message. And I know, and I really appreciate that you took the chance on us and came, because I know that the people here have been moved. And we've been talking about this among ourselves with my wife and a couple of other people that are here with us, that this, more than any of the conferences that we have done, I think is transformative. And what it says to me is that we have to move now from the stage where we are up getting the information, which is still important, but now we have to move to start assimilating and taking that information and making it transformative inside each of us. And that's a great challenge. But I think that the people here are up to that challenge, and that's why I think that, you know, there's a saying, the student is ready, the teacher will come. Well, thank you for coming, because I think we're ready. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, sir. Okay. Just a couple of real quick announcements. Somebody left some glasses. They're back on the board.